Hello and welcome to Firstpost Spotlight, where we bring you stories that matter to you from all across the world. From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, we shed light on issues that shape our world. I'm Alison Lagrange, live from Durban, South Africa. Let's begin with the top headlines. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says the country will recognise a Palestinian state at the UN General Assembly in September, following similar moves by the UK, France and Canada. The Philippines president dismisses China's accusation that his recent remarks on the possible Taiwan conflict amounted to playing with fire, reaffirming the country's resolve to defend its territory amid rising tensions in the South China Sea. North Korea's defense chief says they will react with resolute counteraction in the event of provocations from the upcoming joint military drills between South Korea and the United States. Syria's Interior Ministry says it will hold accountable those responsible for the apparent killing of an unarmed man at a hospital during last month's violence in Zuaida province after a purported video of the incident emerged. And Indonesia and Peru sign an agreement to strengthen bilateral trade and investment relations. The agreement comes as one of Jakarta's attempts to diversify its markets amidst the US tariff-induced uncertainties. Hello and welcome. We begin with the latest from the Indian subcontinent, where in a strongly worded response, India has slammed nuclear rhetoric stoked by Pakistan's Army Chief Field Marshal Asim Munir in the United States. New Delhi said, "Nuclear saber rattling is Pakistan's stock in trade, and the international community must judge the irresponsibility of such statements, especially from a country whose military is deeply entangled with terrorist groups." From the heart of the US, Asim Munir escalated the nuclear rhetoric, saying, "We are a nuclear nation. If we think we are going down, we will take half the world down with us." The Indian Ministry of External Affairs called it regrettable that these threats were issued from the soil of a friendly third country, which in this case is the United States. India reiterated that it will never bow to nuclear blackmail and will take all necessary steps to safeguard national security. But Asim Munir, dubbed the fraud marshal by many overseas Pakistanis, did not stop at the nuclear rhetoric. He also stirred controversy with a crude analogy at a US event, after he compared India to a shining Mercedes and Pakistan to a dump truck full of gravel. He said, and I quote, "If the truck hits the car, who's going to be the loser?" Unquote. What Munir intended as a show of grit ended up exposing Islamabad's desperation and disconnect. Fiery speeches and saber-rattling are just the surface of Pakistan's deeper troubles, from politics to security to economy. With each day passing, Pakistan is falling into a deeper pit that it dug for itself. Starting with its borders, tensions continue to simmer in the west with the Taliban-ruled Afghanistan, as cross-border skirmishes remain frequent. Along the Iranian border, Islamabad faces accusations of backing cross-border terrorism, fueling fresh tensions. Coming to its domestic crisis at home, the supporters of former Prime Minister Imran Khan flooded the streets, demanding his release and rejecting the army-backed Shehbaz Sharif government. Meanwhile, Baloch rebels intensify their insurgency, accusing Pakistan's military of systemic human rights abuses and demanding a separate homeland. Adding to this volatile mix is Pakistan's dwindling economy. Its foreign debt ballooned to over $26 billion last year. a figure that experts warn is unsustainable. Caught in this tangled web of insurgencies, political unrest, border conflicts and economic strain, Pakistan's military finds itself stretched thinner than ever. Field Marshal Munir's nuclear threats from American soil reveal more recklessness than real power. For a country juggling so many crises, such bluster may prove far more dangerous than any external adversary. And now let's move to the South China Sea, where another encounter has played out. Two Chinese vessels, one from the Navy, another from the Coast Guard, slammed into each other. The dramatic incident was caught on camera as both the Chinese vessels were chasing a Philippine ship. It happened near the contested Scarborough Shoal. The Philippine Coast Guard was escorting aid boats for local fishermen. According to Manila, the Chinese Coast Guard vessel made a risky maneuver and struck the Navy warship. The result? The Coast Guard vessel's front deck was badly damaged and left unseaworthy. It was unclear if anyone was hurt in the incident. Now, earlier in the chase, the Philippine ship, the BRP Suluan, was hit with water cannon and it evaded. According to the Philippines, the Chinese crew did not respond to offers of help from the Filipino ship after the collision. China's Coast Guard confirmed a confrontation, but not the crash. It said it took necessary measures to block and drive away the Philippine vessel. Earlier, the Philippines President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. said the country's patrol vessels would continue to be present in the area. He added that this is to defend and exercise Manila's sovereign rights over what it considers to be a part of its territory. The collision is the latest in a series of confrontations between China and the Philippines in the South China Sea. Beijing claims almost the entire South China Sea, a claim rejected by international law. The Scarborough Shoal, a triangular chain of reefs and rocks, has been a flashpoint between the countries since China seized it from the Philippines in 2012. The waterway is vital. More than 60% of global maritime trade passes through it. That's $3.4 trillion worth of cargo each year. The South China Sea is also rich in fish and resources. Millions depend on it for their livelihoods. And China's assertiveness in the sea is rising. It has built ports, airstrips, and military outposts on reclaimed land, and other countries are pushing back. Japan has sold ships and equipment to the Philippines and Vietnam. The US has reaffirmed its defense treaty with Manila, covering armed forces, public vessels, and aircraft in the South China Sea. Joint training, weapons transfers, and base access are expanding. Meanwhile, the ships keep clashing in the disputed sea, and a fault line deepens. The waves have settled for now, but the storm, that's still brewing. And moving on, the bombs and missiles between Israel and Iran may be on snooze mode right now, but the war, it remains far from over. For now, it has gone digital. A shadow battle is now being fought with hackers, spyware, and precision cyber attacks. Just hours after Israel's surprise air raids on Iran in June, phones belonging to Israeli officials lit up with a barrage of suspicious text messages, and each one was loaded with malicious links, a Trojan horse in SMS form. These messages have not stopped, even as the two sides agreed to halt the fighting. To Israeli intelligence, the fingerprints are unmistakable. Tehran's cyber operatives, striking back, even as the ceasefire on the ground continued to hold. For more than a decade, Israel and Iran have traded blows in cyberspace. Back in 2010, and again in 2021, the Stuxnet virus, widely believed to be a joint US-Israeli creation, sabotaged Iran's Natanz nuclear facility, decapacitating centrifuges without a single bomb being dropped. The same site was hit again in June, this time in tandem with Israel's aerial campaign. Iran, in turn, has hit small businesses in Israel's defense supply chain and sought to sow panic through disinformation. But the latest exchanges show just how ruthless this invisible war has become. Israeli cybersecurity firms say that Iranian hackers have impersonated government officials in elaborate phishing schemes, targeted major banks in theft attempts worth millions, and leaked personal data of thousands linked to Israel's defense and security networks onto the dark web. During the war, most notably, Iran has been accused of sending fake emergency alerts, telling Israeli civilians not to seek shelter during missile strikes. Now, Iran hasn't escaped unscathed. During June's fighting, Israeli cyber units reportedly knocked out segments of Iran's air defense systems, clearing the skies for its opening wave of airstrikes. A coordinated espionage campaign is said to have mapped Iran's nuclear scientists and military leadership in such detail that targeted assassinations became possible in the war's first hours. In the weeks since the ceasefire, cyber experts say that neither side has yet landed the kind of digital knockout blow that would cripple a nation. Instead, it's a high-stakes game of cat and mouse, probing, testing, infiltrating, all without crossing the line into all-out war. In cyberspace, accountability is murky. Hackers can hit hard and vanish into the digital fog, making it easier to keep this shadow war alive. So while the world watches the ceasefire hold above ground, Israel and Iran's covert cyber conflict grinds on, shaping the future of warfare without a single bullet fired. And India has become the leading supplier of smartphones to the United States. Yes, you heard that right. From just 2 mobile manufacturing units in 2014 to over 300 today, and from importing most mobile phones to manufacturing almost all of them domestically, the numbers tell a story, and the story is hard to ignore. India's Union Minister, Ashwini Vaishnaw, recently said that the electronics manufacturing in India is now worth 12 trillion rupees. This comes to roughly $137 billion, and that's 6 times more than the numbers 11 years ago. Exports, they have grown 8-fold to 3 trillion rupees or $35 billion. In mobile phones, the value of manufacturing has jumped from nearly 19,000 crore rupees or around $2.5 billion in 2014 to over 4 trillion rupees or $48 billion in 2024. The minister said that only 26% of phones sold in India were made domestically. Today, that's at 99%. And that's not all. According to data by India's Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, India is now the world's 2nd largest mobile phone manufacturer country. Now, Vaishnaw said that this growth reflects the government's vision of making India a global hub for technology production. The Union Minister called it a result of policy, investment, and scale. Now, the impact is being felt far beyond India's borders. Fresh data from research firm Canalys shows just how much the global order is shifting. The data shows that India has now overtaken China to become the top exporter of smartphones to the US as of June 2025. A year ago, India accounted for just 13% of American smartphone imports. Now the figure stands at 44%. China's share has collapsed from 61% to 25%, and even Vietnam has climbed ahead of China in the race of smartphone exports. The surge from India was driven primarily by Apple's accelerated shift away from China, heightened trade tensions and tariff threats, and supply chain diversification. These are driving the change. Now, Apple plans to make around a quarter of all iPhones in India within a few years. Samsung and Motorola are also moving some US-bound assembly to India, though on a smaller scale. And this has made Donald Trump worried. Trump had threatened Apple with additional tariffs and urged the company's CEO, Tim Cook, to make iPhones domestically. And Apple bowed to the pressure. Last week, it said it would be investing another $100 billion in the US, bringing its total recent commitment to $600 billion in the next 4 years. But the recent numbers mark a decisive moment in global manufacturing. India is evolving from a service-driven economy to a technology manufacturing powerhouse. The supply chain map for the world's most coveted devices are being redrawn. India has already replaced China in America's smartphone market. The question now is, will this be the blueprint for other industries? The next big shift could already be in motion, and when it arrives, the global balance of power in technology may never look the same again. And that's all we have on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to Firstpost.
From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, shedding light on the world's top headlines, detailed analysis on the stories that matter the most to you. Catch it all on Spotlight at 6 p.m. India time and 12:30 GMT, only on Firstpost.